Okay, so does anybody here have two different size feet? Okay, good. Okay, sort of. I don't know what that means. Because I, like 30% of the population, by the way, have two different size feet. And there's no clinical name for this, so I have made up my own. It's called a misfoot, or a misfeet, or even a misfit. So I'm also a complete exercise fanatic. And the combination of these two things can be kind of a problem, because when I'm picking exercise shoes, I have to pick, am I catering to my big foot or my little foot? So this one time, I completely screwed up. I go to this hipster sneaker store in Hollywood that doesn't accept returns, and I cater to my big foot. And so off I go to my hip hop dance class, and I'm like gonna kill it with a pop and lock, but instead of popping or locking, I am tripping in shoes that are literally clown size on me. So it just so happened that I was going out to Skid Row to feed the homeless that night, and I thought, why don't I bring these overpriced, too big sneakers down to Skid Row and give them to somebody who could use them a lot more than I can. So down I go to Skid Row, ready to feel like this excellent person, and I immediately spot this like ideal sneaker recipient, which is to say a guy who looked like he could use kind of a new pair of anything. So I hand him the sneakers, ready for his gratitude, and instead like he looks at me, he looks at the sneakers, he looks back at me, and he's like, you don't have another color? That's what he said. So I go home really discouraged about humanity, you know. Here I am trying to give back, and this guy who could clearly use my gift is sniffing at it. So the more I thought about it, the more I wondered, why did I feel like I needed to be labeled some good person for what I'd done? And that got me thinking about labels. See, we have all worn a lot of labels in our life. We are all wearing labels on our clothing. I've worn the label of woman. I wore the label of young. Now I feel like I wear the label of older. And maybe you've worn the label of student or divorced or sexual abuse victim, whatever it is. And we've worn silly labels. Like I have worn the label of cat lady. It's true. One of my books is about my relationship with my cats. And on the Internet Movie Database, IMDb, where it lists like your credits for TV and film, it has this trivia thing. And like the trivia is always really interesting. It's like, was a distant relative of Charlie Chaplin, or has climbed Machu Picchu. Mine, one bit of trivia, has a cat. That's all it says. But the most important label I've worn is a little less benign than cat lady. See, the most important label I've worn is addict. And I have embraced that label wholeheartedly. Now, everybody has a different definition of addict, so I'm going to give you mine. It's somebody who is so uncomfortable with how they feel that they're willing to do anything they can to change it, even if changing it may mean dying. Now, you may wonder, why would I embrace a label that everybody knows is bad? And I get it. Before I embraced the label of addict, I was horrified when people labeled me as one, and they did. An addict, I thought, was the person clutching the empty bottle in the gutter, or the needle in their arm, or maybe somebody like the guy I'd given my shoes to. It wasn't the girl from the nice family who went to the good college but just happened to spend her 20s holed up by herself doing cocaine. Of course, because I was holed up by myself doing cocaine, I knew there was something wrong with me. You know, I thought I had to be maybe like not fit for this world, or you know, a freak destined to spend her life alone. And I realized once the pain of how I was living got to be greater than the pain of changing, that there was something wrong with me. I was an addict. I still am. I'm just one who hasn't had a drink or a drug in over 17 years. Oh, thank you. Thank you. But back to Skid Row. When I think about the experience now, I realize I was so consumed by my own disappointment over this man's failure to appreciate my gift that I failed to see my own prejudice. You know, I saw a man with an invisible label that said homeless. He saw a pair of shoes he didn't like. To me, he was someone who should be so grateful to someone like me for caring. To him, he was a man with his own hopes and dreams, his own taste in sneakers, a man who had probably fallen on hard times. And he surely saw me with a label of his own. Not excellent person or whatever it was I'd want him to, but who knows, do-gooder, trying to feel better. I really don't know. But the problem, as I see it, is not that we label people. It's that we do it in this closed-minded way. If we could use a label as a jumping off point and not a conclusion, I think it could be one of our greatest tools for open-mindedness. Consider this. When students are labeled smart or motivated, studies show it changes the rest of their lives. But that's not the only good that labels do. Labels, they give us a tribe because they give us a group of like-minded individuals that we can be a part of, whether that is Deadheads or Burners or Dodgers fans or Lakers fans or writers or students or addicts. And labels change. Our perception of labels change. If you don't believe me, consider this. When I was growing up, the worst label you could have was nerd. Cut to today, they are gods who walk among us, I live in Hollywood, so people interact with celebrities. I could care less if someone sends me a picture of them with a celebrity. I had a friend who sent me a selfie he took with Mark Zuckerberg. I almost lost my mind. And it's not just Mark Zuckerberg, it's Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, and they are our gods today. And nerd isn't the only label that's changed. Think about ADD, attention deficit disorder. Now, not that long ago, if you had that, you were real screwed up. That's what that label meant. Today, Ted Turner and Richard Branson are talking about having it. And dyslexia? When I was growing up, you were stupid if you were dyslexic. That's what that meant. Cut to now, and if I'm going to continue to subscribe to that label as meaning stupid, I'm going to have to reconcile that with the fact that Steven Spielberg and John Irving are among the people who are dyslexic. And how do I know that? Because they have talked about it publicly, in turn giving other people who may be suffering in shame with that label permission to do the same. Now, I noticed something when I embraced the label of addict. Sober addicts are some of the smartest, coolest, most charming, most motivated, most successful people I've ever met in my life. It was no wonder I realized that these entertainers I loved, whether it was Elton John or Russell Brand or Stephen King the writer, that they were sober addicts. And it was no wonder I realized that the people who made me want to be a writer, people like Fitzgerald and Tennessee Williams, had struggled with alcoholism. Now, before I embraced the label of addict, I didn't see myself as smart or interesting or charming or motivated or successful. But as soon as I embraced the label and started to notice those commonalities among all the sober addicts I was meeting, I started to think, well, maybe that's me too. Now, we all have labels we're ashamed of. And I'll tell you, when I was struggling with the label of addict, it got bad. It ended up in a night over 17 years ago, drunk high, I was driving, and I thought I could just end it all by swerving into oncoming traffic. I didn't. And I could regale you with many tales of my seedy adventures and misdeeds, but honestly, they're not that interesting. What's interesting is I wear the label squarely on my chest now, in turn giving other people permission to do the same. Now, like I said, we all have labels we're ashamed of, and that means we can all be part of a revolution. Yes, by simply embracing the labels you are most ashamed of, you can be part of a revolution. As Leonard Cohen said, there's a crack in everything. That's where the light comes in. So if you don't know where to start, how about the label, what you are, what I am, what the guy I gave my shoes to is, human? Or what about the one I started off with, misfit? I don't know anybody who hasn't for at least a split second felt like one of those. So that is my message to you. Go out there, fellow misfits. Embrace your labels, share them with your loved ones. If you're comfortable, share them with everyone. Change the world. Thank you.